What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Draft Hub. Today, we are rolling right along to the very end of the 2025-26 college football conference predictions. Today, we are doing the SEC. So, yes, I have left the Big Ten for last. So, I decided it was a toss up between the two. I decided on going with the SEC. I feel like the SEC might be a little bit more straightforward in terms of the top half of the teams than in the Big Ten. I feel like there's a little bit more controversy with that conference. So I went with the SEC. So some big, heavy hitters expected at the top of this conference. I think this year is pretty straightforward, honestly. You're going to see a lot of teams with a lot of good records. Same thing as years that we've seen prior. And we're gonna have to decipher the information. We're gonna have to go through everything with a fine tooth comb and just see where I have everyone. But my favorite team in college football, Texas A&M, is in the SEC. I don't expect huge things out of this team, but I expect them to be pretty good. But before we get into the SEC record predictions for the 2025-26 season, if you guys enjoy this content, please leave a like and please subscribe to the channel. We are closing it at the time of recording. We are closing in on 300 subscribers, and that's just in the off season. The college football season, the NFL season at the time of recording, both haven't even started yet. And I started this channel right before the NFL draft. So huge growth in a short amount of time. I can't wait to see what happens during the NFL season and the college football season. Can't thank you guys enough. Let's dive into the SEC record predictions. At number 16 and last in the SEC, I have the Kentucky Wildcats with head coach Mark Stoops. I know this could be potentially unfamiliar territory for the way that Kentucky has performed over the last decade, but man, this team was hit really hard through the transfer portal, through graduations, through the NFL draft. This team has been decimated by the transfer portal. Right away, you think wide receivers Dane Key, Barry Brown, those guys leaving. The huge losses there. The defense last year was a usually solid unit, took a massive step back. They were 15th overall in the SEC against the run. They allowed just over 6 yards per play last year as well. 3 returning starters. There's a ton in the transfer portal on the offensive side. On the defensive side, Zach Calzada, who is from Incarnate Wood, Texas A&M, Auburn, is expected to take the starting role for the Wildcats, but really I don't expect much. I like Dante Dowdell quite a lot, and I think he's actually going to be the offensive catalyst. Kendrick Law, again, is another player that I like quite a bit, but really, I mean, we're going to dive in. Usually I'll give my spiel, and then we'll dive into the actual schedule itself, but the Wildcats have a very tough schedule and out of conference schedule, and then you take into account the SEC. I mean, it's going to be really tough for them to find wins. Like I said, I mean, they brought in a ton of transfers on the defensive side, a couple guys that could probably help down the line, but to be quite honest with you, I mean, it's just such a lack of talent on this Kentucky team. Looking at the Wildcats schedule here, they open up the season against Toledo, and I'll be quite honest with you, this could be a cold take really fast since that game is on August 30th, but I think they have a really good chance to lose that game. I think Toledo is actually one of the better group of 5 teams in the FBS, and I don't think that is a guaranteed win at all for the Kentucky Wildcats. Really, the only two maybe guaranteed. Nothing is a guarantee in football. It is any given Sunday. In this case, it's any given Saturday. The only 2 games that I could see as basically, foolproof wins for the Kentucky Wildcats this year: Eastern Michigan on September 13th and Tennessee Tech on November 15th. So in between that, you have Toledo, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, Vanderbilt, Louisville. Vanderbilt is another game that potentially they could win. I can't really see them beating Louisville. So Vanderbilt is another potential win. So this team could maximize out at 4-8 if they do win against Toledo and they do win against Vanderbilt. But really, that's all I could see. And after a 4-8 season last year as well, you kind of figure the time is almost running out on Mark Stoops at Kentucky. At number 15, I have the Mississippi State Bulldogs with a record of 3-9. Jeff Lebby last year kind of went into year 0 of a rebuild. It certainly seemed like, going 2-10 and winless for the first time in the SEC since 2002, something like that. Mississippi State. They brought in Fluff Bothwell, which I thought was a really, really nice transfer running back in from South Alabama. I think he's going to be the offensive catalyst for them. The defense is just really where it's an absolute disaster. I mean, you have Blake Shapen, who's back at the helm on the offensive side. Jeff Lebby is known for building high-powered offenses. So overall, I'm not really too worried about Mississippi State on the offensive side. It's just the defense that is just pretty putrid. 38.9 points per game and 7.1 yards per play last year were given up. This is also a defensive unit that did bring in a hefty amount of transfers, but I don't really think you're getting too many impact players on that side of the ball. I don't expect a major improvement on the defensive side. I mean, really, it's hard to go downhill from almost 39 points a game and 7 yards a play. So any improvement on that in that area should signal maybe another win or two. I expect a slight improvement from this overall team, 2-10, like I said last year, 3-9. I don't know if any. Maybe there could be a one or two SEC wins in there for them. The schedule itself, I feel like, especially being in the SEC, kind of feels on the easier side. So they open up against Southern Miss. That's a game that I think they could win. Arizona State, they have Alcorn State, which I hope is a win. Northern Illinois is very winnable. Then they have Tennessee, Texas A&M, Florida, Texas. Then they play at Arkansas, which is another very winnable game. At Georgia, Missouri is a winnable game. And then Ole Miss this year could potentially be a toss-up. So if the defense kind of, gets itself together and they could kind of play more of a bend, not break on the defensive side, I think that they actually have a chance to maybe even win 4 or 5 games. There are a couple toss-ups in there, but I am expecting the worst from this Mississippi State. Excuse me, that was a lot going on there in that sentence. I expect the absolute worst from Mississippi State for another year. I think Lebby is building something on the offensive side, but on the defensive side, it's really just not there. At number 15, I have the Arkansas Razorbacks here, and after a down year 2 years ago for Sam Pittman, his seat was certainly hot. He came up with a 7-6 overall record last year and a bowl victory over Texas Tech. So a very, very impressive season for the Razorbacks last year, who have basically fallen on hard times recently. But really it's so tough because, especially with quarterback Talon Green, it seems like the potential is kind of limitless. An unbelievable amount of yards overall, almost 3,700 total yards, 3,200 yards passing, over 600 rushing yards, 15 passing touchdowns. The talent is there. There's 2 problems for me, or really 3. It's the lack of weapons, as Arkansas lost their top 6 leading receivers last year, either through the transfer portal, through graduation, or through the NFL draft. Andrew Armstrong being a big one. Fan of my old channel, by the way. I had him on for an interview. He was a delightful human being. I wish nothing but the best for Andrew. That, the defensive side, again, lost a ton on the defensive side, expecting a lot from transfers that don't really seem like they're going to be really high impact players. Fernando Carmona is a player on the offensive side that I like quite a bit. I think he's going to be, at the beginning of the year, he's going to be viewed as a day 3 pick in the NFL draft. Could be even a high day 2 pick when it's all said and done. David Oki is a really, really nice, versatile defensive lineman who is an absolute stud. What did he have? 9.5, 8.5 sacks last year. He was awesome. So the talent is there in pretty high profile places on the team. Really, it's the schedule that gets it for me. It is particularly brutal for the most part. So I have them at 4-8. Alabama A&M should be a win. Arkansas State should be a win. Ole Miss is tough. Memphis is very tough, but again, a winnable game. Then you have Notre Dame, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State is a winnable game. Then LSU, Texas, and Missouri. It's a very, very tough schedule for the Razorbacks this year. I don't think 7-6 or 6-6 rather, and a bowl appearance is in their future. Again, I do think, unfortunately, through the talent that they lost, I don't think Talon Green's overall talent and ceiling is going to be able to make up for the talent that they lost in the overall schedule that they're playing. So I do think 4-8 is in their future. I can see, listen, if all goes well, say if everything goes perfectly, you're going to get a win against A&M, Alabama A&M, Arkansas State. So you start off 2-0. Maybe they shock either Ole Miss or Memphis. So you're 3-1 out of the gate through the first 4 games. Maybe they beat Mississippi State. Maybe they beat Missouri. There is a path to 5 to 6 wins. It's just a really, really difficult path. And unfortunately, with the talent that Arkansas possesses, I just don't see that happening. At number 13, I have the Missouri Tigers at 6-6. Eli Drinkwitz is facing a reloading year on the offensive side. I mean, look at the amount of talent that departed for the NFL this past year. Right off the top of my head, you think Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, Armand Membu, Brady Cook. I'm just naming a few here. Obviously, there are way more. There a lot of premium talent has gone through the draft and through free agency. I do like that they brought in Ahmad Hardy from Louisiana Monroe. I think he's going to be an absolute stud for them. Missouri has had a very, very nice track record over the past decade of really developing these running backs and turning them into absolute studs. Bo Prabula is coming in from Penn State. He is going to be the starting quarterback. Kind of tough, especially trying to follow up Brady Cook and the success that he did have, not only at Missouri, but just in the SEC in total, is going to be really tough. While the offense figures itself out, the defense, they're going to be able to rely on the defense. They brought in Jalen Catalon, who at this point in his career, I feel like has just played for like every team in the FBS, it almost feels like. I think he's a great player. I truly do. I don't know, whether through injuries and transfers, the guy just can't stick to one team. And it feels like I've been scouting him to play in the NFL for the last 4 years now. So get it together, Jalen. Hopefully you have a really nice year and you go into the NFL as like a 25-year-old rookie. But on the defensive side, they're going to be able to I think they're going to be able to lean on it while they figure it out. Damian Wilson, Josiah Trotter, like I said, Jalen Catalon. They brought in a couple really, really nice players. A veteran core, Chris McClellan, Dalen Carnell. It's going to be a good unit for the Missouri Tigers. So the offense isn't going to take center stage as it has the past few years. And to be fair, on the defensive side, they have produced quite a bit of good defensive talent as well. I don't know why the first name that popped into my head was Chris Abrams-Drain, but obviously he's a great player for the Denver Broncos right now. But yeah, no, I think on the offensive side, it's just going to take a little bit of time for them to figure it out. I do think they will be bowl eligible. I think Drinkwitz is a very, very good head coach. Central Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana, the 3 games out the gate are very, very winnable. Then they play South Carolina. They play UMass, another winnable game. Alabama and Auburn. Then Vanderbilt is a winnable game. Texas A&M, Mississippi State, and Arkansas, and Oklahoma. 2 out of those last 3 are very winnable as well. So if all goes right, this could very well be an 8-win team, a 7 or 8-win team. And I really wanted to make them a 7-win team, but I just think truly the offense is going to kind of sputter this year. In a rebuilding year for Drinkwitz, I don't think that he's going to get the very best of an offensive unit that we know he can get the best out of. Was there a bigger turnaround for a program in a 2-year span than Vanderbilt after going 2-10 and 0-8 in the SEC 2 years ago? Last year, Diego Pavia came in, and it sounds crazy that he took the college football world by storm, and they wound up going 7-6. But yeah, he kind of took the college football world by storm with his Vanderbilt Commodores team, who hasn't been good, I don't think, in my lifetime. And Clark Leah did a fantastic job. Diego Pavia, they do have really good players on both sides of the ball. Eli Stowers is a top tight end in the 2026 draft class. Martell Height is a player that I like quite a bit as a corner wide receiver, kind of Travis Hunter type of player. Really good stats on the defensive side. I believe he had 4 interceptions. I think it was either 2 interceptions, 4 pass deflections, or vice versa. A super versatile player that excites me quite a bit. Junior Sherrill is another player that I think is going to break out on the offense. Defense last year was a major improvement for them. I believe they went from giving up 36 points per game to a little bit under 24. It's a tale. Really, the reason it's not a knock on anyone, and I do think they repeat success just based off of the schedule for the most part, because it's a tale of 2 schedules for Vanderbilt. They have some really easy games, and then they have, really difficult games. So we run through the schedule here. You're looking at Charleston Southern to lead it off, Virginia Tech, South Carolina, Georgia State, which I don't think is as easy as a game as people think. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Georgia State this year. Utah State, Alabama, LSU, Missouri, Texas, Auburn, Kentucky, and Tennessee. So the back end of that schedule is pretty difficult. The first 6 games, yeah, I could really see Vanderbilt being like 5-1 or 4-2, and then kind of collapsing in the second half. But yeah, it's a tale of two schedules for the most part. I just think this team doesn't have not only the appeal of transfers, they don't have the recruitment to sustain some type of long-term success. And I don't think Diego Pavia in his last year in Vanderbilt being this year, I don't think that he's going to change the culture that much to where they have sustained success. So I think kind of sort of out with the door of Pavia is kind of where the talent, I'm not the talent, where the success kind of dries up. I feel like Vanderbilt is a perpetual 2 to 4 win team every single year, and I don't think that's going to change. But after this year, I think it's going to change. I do think they go 6-6, and I do think they go bowling yet again. The Ole Miss Rebels come in at 11 at 7-5 for me, and I know that might be granted with the loaded rosters that Ole Miss have had the last few years and the overall success. That seems like a really big letdown year. But for Lane Kiffin, this does seem like a transitional year. This year, more than others, I feel like, at least on the offensive side of the ball, Ole Miss lacks a lot of talent. This is a completely rebuilt offensive line. Austin Simmons is a player that excites me quite a bit. Overall, throughout the series, I've only done a slide like this 3 times, including this one, where I have one player as a breakout and a player of the year. And I think Austin Simmons is going to be that. I think he is a very, very quiet Heisman candidate. I truly think that he possesses that type of talent. But around him is what's going to be tough. The weapons just aren't there like they were. The tight end room is great for Ole Miss. The wide receivers do lack, especially compared to what we've seen in years prior. On the defensive side, it is a rebuild as well, but they do have some awesome transfers and some awesome returning players. Princewell Ume-Milan, Deshaun Womack, these are players that are coming in to speed up the process of the rebuild up front. TJ Daugherty, yes, and Suntarine Perkins are players that are coming back in the front seven that I think are going to be awesome as well. So I think that this is, I want to make them so much more competitive than they are, but I just feel like, especially last year with the relative letdown of the Ole Miss Rebels for the talent that they had, I feel like with a lot less talent this year, it's going to be tough. Georgia State, Kentucky, Arkansas, Tulane, LSU, Washington State are the first 6 games, 5 of them being home, by the way. So really, really nice stretch for Ole Miss. Then you have Georgia, Oklahoma, South Carolina, the Citadel, Florida, and Mississippi State. So, you know, if you're closing in, if you're 5-5 or 4-5 or something like that, sorry, if you're, 5-4 or something, 6 and whatever towards the end, the Citadel and Mississippi State are 2 really nice games to have at the end. But yeah, Caden Lee is another nice wide receiver as well for Ole Miss. I just feel like this team is a lot flatter than they've been in years prior. And I think the way to combat that is to let Austin Simmons cook. I do think he's going to be an absolute stud for Ole Miss. I just think it's going to take a year. So I do think this is a bit of a rebuilding year for the transfer king, Lane Kiffin. I have the Tennessee Volunteers at number 10 in the SEC at 8-4. And this was a pretty tumultuous offseason for the Tennessee Volunteers with the transfer of their star quarterback, and we all say it differently. You could say I butchered it, but this is how I read it. This is how I'm going to say it. Nico Lamalieva. So, it seems like Joey Aguilar was a panic transfer. That does not inspire me. And it's funny how I'm saying that all this doesn't inspire me, but yet I have them at an 8-4 record. But yeah, just kind of sort of uninspiring for the Tennessee Volunteers. Chris Brazzell is a nice wide receiver I like. On the defensive side, Boo Carter is an absolute stud. Jermod McCoy could very well be the top cornerback in the entire country when it's all said and done, when he does come back from his ACL injury, as long as he comes back fully healthy and ready to go like he was before. But what we know with ACL technology and everything now, those injuries aren't as bad as they once were. There's a lot of question marks on there's just a lot of talent lost on this team. The offensive line is still good. The weapons, to me, are lacking a little bit. The running back room was pretty much decimated. They're going to have to rely quite a bit on some unproven guys. Star Thomas, Peyton Lewis, Deshaun Bishop are the go-to guys. Mike Matthews is a sophomore that I like quite a bit, but he's unproven for the wide receivers. It is a pretty barren group for the most part. And Aguilar isn't a player that really kind of excites me. With the wide splits in this offense, I feel like any quarterback could really kind of succeed. The Hendon Hooker effect. I feel like Aguilar is probably going to have his best season. And the schedule, for the most part, is favorable for this Tennessee team. Let me pull it up right here. I usually have it pulled up, and I have it right here. Yeah. So the first 5 games, really the first 6 games, I could see Tennessee being 5-1 quite easily. Syracuse, East Tennessee State, Georgia, UAB, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. Then the back half is definitely a little bit harder with Alabama, Kentucky, Oklahoma, New Mexico State, Florida, and Vanderbilt. So, very winnable games in there overall. I just don't like the lack of talent on the offensive side for this Tennessee Volunteers team. But like I said, in this offense with the wide splits, a lot of guys can become superstars. They also lost one of my favorite players in all of college football, in Squirrel White, who really the only reason why I like him that much is because of his awesome name. But they lost Dante Thornton Jr. through the NFL draft, Squirrel White through the transfer portal. A lot of talent is lost, and I don't think they really did an adequate job of making it up, especially after Lamalieva left. Getting Joey Aguilar seemed like a panic, but I still think the schedule is more than favorable for Tennessee to have a fairly successful season. At number 9, I have the Oklahoma Sooners at 8-4. Brett Venables' squad. I feel like this is one of the more controversial record predictions I have in this video, because I love what they did through the transfer portal. Getting Jaden Ott to play running back, getting John Mateer to play quarterback. Not only did they bring in John Mateer, but they also brought in Ben Arbuckle, who was the offensive coordinator at Washington State. John Mateer was an absolute beast over there. So I love the fact that they're kind of acclimating the offense to John Mateer. I think he is a favorite Heisman candidate, to be quite honest with you. Oklahoma last year only averaged 16.5 points per game in SEC play on the offensive side last year. So obviously someone like Mateer, even though he's going to have a transitional period of facing tougher defenses going from Washington State to Oklahoma, I feel like he'll be okay on that side. The offensive line is a little bit of a question mark. The receiving core, after an injury-plagued year last year, they also lost Nick Anderson to a transfer to LSU. Deion Burks is coming back healthy, so that's a huge, huge upgrade for them on the wide receiver side. But I feel like there's a lot of question marks on the offensive 11, and I think overall they're going to be able to work it out as the season goes on. Defensively, this team was a stud, 13th ranked defense overall last year. And yes, they did lose Billy Bowman and Danny Stutzman, but you have some unbelievable players. And, R. Mason Thomas is one of the better defensive ends in not only the SEC, in the country. Peyton Bowen, Eli Bowen, fantastic secondary players as well. This team overall is just loaded on the defensive side. I don't really think that they're going to miss a step on the defensive side. It's just going to be how Mateer adapts and how the offensive line gels together and how the weapons kind of emerge yet again from last year. So, schedule wise, you got Illinois State, Michigan, Temple, Auburn, Kent State. So you got three out of conference games that are very easy to win there. Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, and LSU. So really, I think the wins come against Illinois State, Michigan, Temple, Kent State, Ole Miss, Missouri, and then you got a couple toss-up games in there. Auburn could be a really good game. LSU could be a really good game. Tennessee could be a really good game. So, I do think that they win a couple of those toss-up games as well, and I do think 8-4 is quite a fair record for this team. But I'm super excited to see what John Mateer can do at a Power 4, or really the top conference in the country for Oklahoma. At number 8, I have my Texas A&M Aggies. Mike Elko last year, 8-5 overall, was a promising season. I don't see too much. Am I the only one? Now, listen, bear with me here. Am I the only one that just doesn't see it with Marcel Reed? I'm seeing people are like, he's a sleeper Heisman candidate. He's this, he's that. He's a phenomenal athlete. Don't get me wrong, but Am I the only one that I'm just like, he's all right. I see him make far more mistakes than I see him make positive plays. I don't know. I don't really believe in him, and I think until A&M can get an actual, dual threat, awesome quarterback in there, I don't think that they're going to make too much noise in the SEC. But unbelievable players on both sides. Kevin Concepcion coming in from NC State was a huge get for them, especially after losing Noah Thomas to Georgia. Le'Veon Moss is fully healthy this year. I think he's going to be a stud. The offensive line is good. On the defensive side, Cassius Howell is really awesome. Tareen York, Will Lee. This team is loaded on both sides of the ball. Really, I just think the quarterback play is not going to be there for Texas A&M. UTSA, Utah State. Those are two games that I expect them to win out of the gate. Notre Dame, Auburn, Mississippi State, Florida, Arkansas, LSU. Then you finish off the year Missouri, South Carolina, Samford, and Texas. So it's a really difficult schedule for A&M to really make. I'm not like other A&M fans. I feel like a lot of people that I talk to say that they are expecting playoffs from this team. They're expecting a 10-2 record. I mean, granted, the talent is there, but I mean, years prior, last year, they had a phenomenal amount of talent on their team. Probably more, at least on the offensive side, talent-wise, than they did last year. And I feel like they didn't really bust out in a crazy way. So really, I think it's more of a sideways year. Tareen York is such a stud. I think he's my number one overall linebacker in the 2026 NFL draft. Concepcion, as long as he could, clean up the drops, he's an absolute stud with the ball in his hands. As long as Le'Veon Moss can stay healthy, he's a stud. Like I said, the offensive line is good. The defensive line is good. All three levels of the secondary are really good. I just think that this is a really tough schedule, and I don't think the quarterback play is going to be nearly as good as people make it out to be. At number 7, I have the Florida Gators at, you guessed it, 8-4. Billy Napier with a turnaround year last year. Really, the second half of the year was the moneymaker for the Florida Gators, especially on the defensive side. But when you had the amount of talent on the defensive side that the Gators did and still possess, really you could see why they did very, very well. But DJ Lagway, this is his team now. There's no Graham Mertz to get in the way. DJ Lagway is a stud. He's a potential Heisman candidate as well. Eugene Wilson III, a really, really good player. A really, really underrated wide receiver who's electric with the ball in his hand. Jaden Ball last year, 673 rushing yards. He's going to lead this very, very deep rushing attack. On the defensive side, you got Caleb Banks, Tyreek Sapp. You got really, really good players on the defensive line. My one area of concern, though, is the overall turnover in the secondary, the cornerback position, the safety position. I do feel like Florida is going to get, if the pass rush doesn't get there as often as I think it can get there, I do think they lack the athletes and the overall talent in the secondary. I'm not saying that they don't have talented players. People are going to misconstrue my words in the comment section. I think they have talented players. I don't think that they have the same level of talent as some wide receivers in the SEC to kind of combat that. So that is an area of concern for me, but this team is really, really solid. I do think, a bowl win, 9-4 is certainly in their future. They do have, the schedule is what it is. I feel like it's pretty difficult for me to see them winning 9 or 10 games. I feel like it's difficult to see a lot of these teams in the SEC win 9 or 10 games this year, to be quite honest with you. Long Island is a toss-up. Not a toss-up. Whoa, is a gimme. South Florida, honestly, is a tougher game that I think the Gators are ready for. LSU, always tough. Miami, very tough. Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Georgia, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida State. That's a tough freaking schedule. Even the non-conference games are tough. You got South Florida in there, you got Miami, and you got Florida State in there. Those are tough games. Seriously. Florida State maybe not as tough as it has been years prior, but yeah, regardless, that's still a very, very tough game for the Florida Gators. So I think Lagway is going to be a stud. I think the offense is going to be awesome. The offensive line, how did I forget about talking about the number 1 overall center in the class in Jake Slaughter? I think he's an unbelievable player in his own right as well. The offensive line is really good. I think that the offense is going to be close to tops in the country. I think you're looking at a top 10 or 15 offense for the Florida Gators. I think defensively, they're really, really front 7 heavy. And then the back end is a little bit more questionable, but I still think that this Gators team is really good. At number 6, I have the LSU Tigers, and really this team, especially on the defensive side, is absolutely loaded. This might be one of the weaker offenses that we've seen from the LSU Tigers in quite some time, and that's really saying a lot because it's still pretty stacked. Of course, you have Garrett Nussmeier, the you know rifle, right arm, gunslinger type, old school gunslinger type quarterback to lead the way. Last year, over 4,000 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, one of the top signal callers in the country. You have Aaron Anderson and Chris Hilton coming back. You got transfers Nick Anderson and Barry Brown. I think Barry Brown is going to be an absolute stud. One of the fastest wide receivers in all of football, all of college football, excuse me. I think he's going to make a huge impact for this LSU team and the downfield passing ability of Garrett Nussmeier. On the defensive side, this is where LSU is absolutely going to make their money. I mean, let's go through some of it here. You got Whit Weeks, who I think is going to easily lead the way for this team. You got Harold Perkins in a new role that I have yet to really see any more news on. They're bringing in Patrick Payton from Florida State, Jack Pyburn from Florida, Bernard Goodson from South Florida, Mansour Delaney, DJ Pickett is a freshman 5-star. Houston safety AJ Halsey is going to make an impact as well. This team is absolutely loaded on the defensive side, and I think 9-3 is kind of like a floor. Honestly, this team, I wouldn't be surprised if they're competing for the SEC title game. I mean, Brian Kelly came in a few years ago. 2 years ago, his defense was terrible. They were one of the worst, not only in the SEC, probably countrywide. I think they ranked dead last in almost every defensive category. Last year, it got a little bit better. This year, through the transfer portal, they have really transformed this defense. So I expect big things from the LSU Tigers. It's not a great start at Clemson. That's next week. That's going to be tough. At Clemson, versus Louisiana Tech, versus Florida, Southeastern Louisiana, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, Alabama, Arkansas, Western Kentucky, and Oklahoma. This is a very, very talented LSU Tigers team. They have a very good head coach in Brian Kelly. It pains me to say that because I'm not really the biggest Brian Kelly fan, but I do think he's a very talented head coach. I expect big things from this LSU Tigers team. If not 9-3, 10-2, or 11-1, and fighting for the first college football berth under the Brian Kelly era. At number 5, I have the Auburn Tigers and a return to greatness, if you will. This is a very tough schedule, but this is a very talented Auburn Tigers team. This is 3 recruitment cycles for Coach Hugh Freeze. He has brought in an unbelievable amount of talent, and especially through the transfer portal this year, he brought in 2 players that I think, well, really 3 players that are going to make a massive impact for this team. You got quarterback Jackson Arnold, you have wide receiver Eric Singleton, and you have left tackle Xavier Chaplin, who I think is one of the top 5 left tackles in the 2026 NFL draft class. Pair that with Keldrick Falk, who I think is the best overall either rush linebacker or defensive end in the 2026 NFL draft class. You pair Eric Singleton with Cam Coleman, immediately becomes the best wide receiver duo in the entire country. You could fight me on that, but I think Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton is unbelievable. I think this is the year for Auburn. I mean, really, if it's not this year, then when? A fantastic amount of talent on both sides of the ball. 22 turnovers last year. The quarterback play has been so bad. I mean, Jackson Arnold, say what you will about Jackson Arnold. I don't think he's going to turn the ball over 22 times. I think there's going to be a massive improvement. One area of concern for me is the seemingly committee at running back. Replacing Jarquez Hunter is going to be tough because he was absolutely awesome for the Auburn Tigers, really the focal point of their offense outside of Cam Coleman. But yeah, I do think anyone is really going to be able to rush really well behind this offensive line. They're just, in addition to Xavier Chaplin, you have Connor Liu at center, who I think is the second best center in the class behind Jake Slaughter. This is just a super, super talented Auburn Tigers team. And really, I don't think there's any excuse for Hugh Freeze. If this team either goes 6-6 or under 500, I think he is fired after this year. Baylor, Ball State, South Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Georgia, Missouri, Kansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mercer, Alabama. I think there are a lot of winnable games in there. It's going to be tough against Baylor. That is a tough first game to open up against. But Ball State, South Alabama, those are 2 wins. Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mercer, that's 5 wins right there. So you're guaranteed, I shouldn't say guaranteed. You have 7 I do think they beat Alabama. I do think they beat Alabama, to be quite honest with you, and I do think that they squeak out a victory against Baylor. So there's your 9 wins for me. I don't know. I saw some people at 10-2. I can't really get to 10 wins. I usually try and give teams a benefit of the doubt for the most part on the positive side of the schedule, but I just can't realistically see 10 wins for this team. I do think there are some toss-ups in there. I mean, against Georgia is going to be tough. Alabama, of course, against A&M is going to be tough. There's tough games on this schedule, but I do think when it's all said and done, the Auburn Tigers come back to glory, and they are 9-3 and fighting for a college football playoff spot. At number 4, I have the South Carolina Gamecocks at a record of 9-3. Shane Beamer really did a great job last year and kind of put South Carolina on the map as a powerhouse in the SEC. I mean, just the overall unbelievable amount of talent that he had really was kind of the catalyst why on the defensive side, especially. I mean, Dylan Stewart broke out as probably the best overall freshman in the country. Demon Clowney is an absolute beast. You know, people that departed off the top of my head, you think Nick Emanwari, Demetrius Knight, TJ Sanders, other people I'm obviously missing. I think Kyle Kennard as well. You know, they're going to miss a lot. So the defensive side, outside of Clowney and Stewart, is I shouldn't say lacking because they're still just so talented all over the place. But I think the defense isn't going to be as influential as it was last year on the offensive side. I'm expecting huge things out of Lenora Sellers. I'm expecting Nick Harbor to break out in a big way because how has this man not had over 2,000 receiving yards already? I mean, 6'5", 235 pounds, running as fast as he does. This man could legitimately run in the high 4.2s, low 4.3s at the NFL Combine. He is an absolute freak of nature. How do they just not throw the ball up there and go, screw it, Nick Harbor's up there somewhere? I think this team is really, really good. And I really wanted to put them higher. I just don't see it for the most part. I think overall losing the talent that they lost, I think they replaced it fine. They have an immense amount of talent. I just think they lost so much talent. And the schedule is pretty hard, man. Virginia Tech, South Carolina State, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Kentucky, LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Coastal Carolina, and Clemson. That's not easy, man. Not easy at all. So, you know, even the first game against Virginia Tech could be an absolute stunner. You have no idea. But especially with a healthy Kyron Drones. But yeah, this is a absolute stacked team. I think that they have contributors all over the place. Jalen Kilgore is a player that I like quite a bit. Josiah Thomas is an exciting offensive lineman as well. Jared Brown on the other side of Nick Harbor. So they have a ton of talent, you know, secondary talent behind the guys that I already mentioned. But yeah, the Gamecocks, Shane Beamer, this is it for them. I feel like it's now or never to make that jump to be one of the absolute powerhouses of the SEC. At number 3, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide with Kalen DeBoer. I think this team is just so stacked. The offensive line is unbelievable. Truly, you have 3, 4 NFL ready, 3 NFL ready talents on that offensive line. LT Overton is unbelievable off the edge. Keon Sabb is fantastic. They have just an absolute bevy of players that we could talk about here. Deontay Lawson, who I thought was going to be a top linebacker from last year. Keon Sabb, Damani Jackson, Tim Keenan. Like I said, the offensive line. Jeremy Bernard, Ryan Williams. I think even with an unproven Ty Simpson at the quarterback position, this team is just too talented on both sides of the football to really lose more than 2 games. I think this is it. I think Alabama is back. I think they're firmly in the college football playoff at this point, even though they are going to be missing out on the SEC championship game. Let's take a look at this, or at least in my predictions, let's take a look at this schedule here. Florida State, Louisiana Monroe, Wisconsin, Georgia, which I do think is a loss, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Tennessee, South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, Eastern Illinois, and Auburn. I really do think the only 2 losses potentially come from Auburn and Georgia, or either Georgia and like an LSU, to be quite honest with you, or South Carolina. One of any combination of those 3 teams. This team is so good. It really is. And as long as Ty Simpson could not crap his pants under center, which, I mean, he really shouldn't, because he should have all day to throw behind that offensive line. The offensive line is just unbelievably stacked. Caden Proctor is one of the largest left tackle prospects we've seen in quite some time. And, I feel like that we're going to see the Evan Neal effect with him. Hopefully not, because already you got guys that either love him or hate him. So Caden Proctor is, an unbelievable talent. Jaden Roberts, Parker Brailsford, just unbelievable talent on this team. Really, they should be a playoff team. Kind of a similar situation at number 2. I have the Georgia Bulldogs at 11-1. Kind of a similar situation to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Really, the only question mark I have on this team is the quarterback situation. Gunnar Stockton looked like an absolute beast in the very, very short amount of time that we saw him play, but he also looked like he had some work to do as well. There are some question marks on the defensive side. One thing I have a big question mark for is, where is the pressure going to come from, at least off the edge? You have 2 unbelievable defensive tackles, one being Christian Miller. Really, why I think Georgia is in for another SEC title berth is this is probably the best receiving core we've seen for Georgia in quite some time. They brought in 2 transfers in Zachariah Branch and Noah Thomas, who I think are going to be unbelievable. You pair that with Oscar Delp, who is a huge tight end prospect as well. I think that this team is really going places. Nate Frazier is a super awesome running back that I like quite a bit. Raylan Wilson, CJ Allen, Christian Miller, Dalen Everett. These are all really, really strong players on the defensive side that are veterans that are going to come through. I think really my only question mark on the defensive side is the pressure off the edge. Other than that, I don't have any question marks about the secondary. I don't really have any question marks about the front 7 except for the edge. The offensive line is good, as it always is. The weapons are great. It's Gunnar Stockton and the pressure off the edge are my 2 concerns for Georgia. Sorry. Marshall, Austin P. I always have a tough time saying that. Austin P. Let's just call that. Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, Auburn, Ole Miss, Florida, Mississippi State, Texas, Charlotte, and Georgia Tech. Really, the only loss I see is a toss-up between Alabama and Texas for me. Sorry, I forgot to mention the schedule for the Georgia Bulldogs. And at number 1, I have the Texas Longhorns for Steve Sarkisian here. Let me just say this right away. I am not one of those guys that think Arch Manning is the next football quarterback god. I don't. I don't want to say this to sound like I'm going against the grain, but really, we've seen him play in 2 games against subpar competition for the most part, at least full games. I need to see a full season of Arch Manning before I could say that he is the best quarterback in the country. He is the Heisman favorite. He's going to lead Texas to the national championship game. I need to see more. I'll be quite honest with you. I think Notre Dame, even with CJ Carr, is probably more championship game bound than Texas. I think Oregon is more championship game bound than Texas. I also think Ohio State is more championship game bound. Clemson is more championship. I don't think the Longhorns are the number 1 overall team in the country. You could say I'm crazy. Do I think that they are a top 5 or top 7 or 8 team? Yeah, absolutely. I think they're going to have a great season. I think they are more talented last year than they are this year. On the defensive side, Colin Simmons, Malik Muhammad, Michael Taft. I mean, they're Anthony Hill. They have fantastic players overall. I'm not worried about the defensive side. Jack Endries is my number 1 overall tight end in the 2026 class that transferred in from Cal. Ryan Wingo is exciting. CJ Baxter is exciting. They have a lot of exciting players. The offensive line is good. DJ Campbell is a really nice low-key prospect that I like. I don't know. I got a bad feeling about Texas. Did I mention Colin Simmons? I think I did. Colin Simmons is awesome as well. Trey Moore is awesome as well. They're going to be good. I mean, there's no way about it. They're a lock to be a top 10 team. They're probably a lock to be top 5. I don't know. I would probably put them at 4 or 5 if I had to do my own rankings. I don't see this team. Call me a hater. Call me whatever. I'm just being honest with you guys. There's no hate for Texas. I've actually quite enjoyed seeing what Texas has done over the last few years under Sarkisian. I think that this is a powerhouse for a long time, especially after Texas football really wasn't great. Even 5, 6, 7 years ago. I love seeing this resurgence. College football is better when Texas is good. That's just common knowledge. When the Red River rivalry actually means something, that college football is back, people. I don't know. I just have a weird feeling about this Texas Longhorns team, and it doesn't start off easy. That's for sure against Ohio State, which is my number one overall team in the country. Ohio State. Then it gets a lot easier. San Jose State, UTEP, Sam Houston, Florida, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Georgia, Arkansas, Texas A&M. One loss, really at the maximum. A devastating season would be 10-2, meaning that they probably lost to Georgia and Ohio State. But don't be surprised if they do lose to Ohio State in the first game of the season, and then they win out. But yeah, that's really my spiel on the Texas Longhorns. And in the SEC championship game, we are having the Georgia Bulldogs against the Texas Longhorns. This is the matchup that I feel like a lot of people want to see. Maybe Alabama and Texas, maybe South Carolina and Texas, or South Carolina and Georgia. But this is the really between the schedule and everything, I feel like these are the two teams that kind of have the easiest path for the most part. And I have Georgia winning the SEC championship game. I don't know, man. I have a feeling that even though the Texas Longhorns have Arch Manning, they have a ton of skill players, they have a ton of great overall players. I feel like this Georgia Bulldogs team is just so well put together. And if they could find a solution for the pressure off the edge throughout the season, if Gunnar Stockton is as good as we think he can be, I don't really think I see Georgia losing to Texas they've been here before. And that's not to say that Sarkisian and Texas haven't been here before, but we've seen in the past couple of years that Texas kind of fall flat on their face, and Georgia's been here before. Georgia knows how to roll. And I know, say what you will about last year, but I think Georgia, with a full year of Gunnar Stockton being the starting quarterback, with the weapons that he possesses in Noah Thomas, Zachariah Branch, Oscar Delp, Nate Frazier, I think this team is really, really good. I think they're back. At a short stint away from the top, I think Georgia's back. I think they win the SEC championship game. I'm sorry if that disappoints you. I'm sorry if that's vanilla and boring, but that is my prediction. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed. Please leave a like and please subscribe to the channel, especially if you're a Georgia Bulldogs fan. Thank you guys so much for watching today. We have one left. That is the Big Ten. That will be coming out around the same time next week, just before the college football season commences. Well, the week one commences on August 30th. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I see you in the next one.